Hello, and welcome back to Educator.com AP World History. Today, or in this session, we get to move to the next era, Period 5. And Period 5 is the industrialization and global capitalism. And the dates for this are 1750 to 1900. And again, let's go over that thinking skill that we're supposed to be developing, which is periodization. So periodization. And we're saying that a period of history is not something that is a real, it's something, God determined. That's the way it is, like this. It's historians that look at history and say, look, that's kind of a big change that's taking place in the world right there. And that's important enough to say we're starting a new era. That characterizes this era, didn't characterize that era. Do you remember our first one? When people learned how to farm. Yes. So farming made a huge difference. That's about 10,000 years ago. And then we said, well, that ended, so to speak, when we developed the classic civilizations. And when the classic civilizations ended, we said there was another huge event that took place. And that event was the we don't like to use the word discovery, but the coming upon the fact that the world has two hemispheres and they hadn't been connected to people, and they became connected, and that changed the world enormously. Now we're coming to another huge kind of event that is going to change the world enormously again. And I think you figured that out. It's industrialization. So the Industrial Revolution is a kind of a starting point of this fifth era of history. Now the question is, what's a revolution? And was this really a revolution? Well, I think if we just put it in its basic terms, a revolution is change that happens very rapidly. Things were this way, and in a short period of time, they're different. So was the Industrial Revolution a revolution? Or are we misunderstanding it when we call it that? Well, yes, it was fairly short period of time in which things changed from non-industrial to industrial. One evidence I have for that is the Luddites. The Luddites were a group of people in England who saw their way of life being changed by industrialization in ways they didn't like. So they set up to destroy the machines and break down the factories. So there's an indication that they did know something revolutionary was taking place. And it did make huge change. You and I have a real hard time imagining the world without what industrialization has done for us. Just our everyday lives are just rife with the stuff of industrialization. And it's hard for us to imagine a life that doesn't include those things. And again, that's why it's difficult for us to go back pre-industrial or early industrial and try to understand those people when they didn't live lives like we do. Well, in what ways could we say that it is not a revolution? Well, it may take a short period of time, but we could also say it took a long period. In other words, if you had been there in 1750, and you, let's say you were born in 1750 and you died in 1820 or something like that, and somebody would say, did a revolution take place while you were alive? You might have said, not that I noticed, because life changed so incrementally that a lot of people didn't recognize that something huge was going on. All right? No, the Industrial Revolution didn't happen to the people it happened to. It happened to the historians who look back and say, oh, look at that. In other words, it's the looking back that gives us the idea that there was a revolution rather than the participants in it. So there's a way in which, no, it wasn't a revolution. And yes, it was a revolution. I'm going for the yes. There's a sense in which over a fairly short period of time, changes took place that make the world completely different.